Hello, hello, hello. This is 3D or 2D.com's The 3D Show.
The Goodbye Edition. Hello, hello, hello. This is Adolph, and I have with me Christin.
Hello, everyone.
And welcome to your final podcast with the website.
Yes, indeed.
How do you feel?
How do I feel?
Yeah.
For every ending, there is a new beginning. Forests can't grow unless things are burned out. So I don't look at endings as sadness anymore. I only see the potentiality for fresh renew.
So, this podcast for listeners, this is going to be slightly different. We've recorded basically the same thing with other people, but Miss Christin here, she doesn't watch as many movies as everyone else, and I don't want to do my own one by myself, so we're going to kind of bounce off each other a little more, have a slightly different version of the same podcast, but I want to try to keep it as consistent as I could, because I want to, give everyone a chance to have the same kind of opportunities to talk about the same things. So I did do a lot of planning for this podcast series of Goodbye podcasts. So this is going to be a slightly different variation of the other ones, but I still think and it'll be enjoyable. We'll try our best to make it entertaining and interesting. So I guess first of all, what are some best memories you have from the podcast or the website?
The best things that I enjoyed was writing music and writing songs and intervals and things for the podcast. That was kind of my main focus, and that's where I put my energy, and I enjoyed every minute of that.
So, just in case listeners don't know, you're the person that helped make the melodies for the intro and outro, and some music we have in between stuff. And sometimes you hear a woman singing, and that would be Miss Christin.
Yes.
So, you didn't ever write any reviews directly, but you did help with some reviews.
Right. I think I did write one review, and I think that was for Gods of Egypt.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that was definitely part of the worst memories, but it was actually kind of fun, though, because it was so bad.
Oh, yeah. That's. I need to get that on DVD just so I can enjoy it again.
I saw it at a garage sale and I was tempted, but I was like, no. I'm not going to watch it.
Yeah, I would have bought that. I would have bought that at a yard sale.
At the very least, the original people were not going to get a dime from it, so I guess. But what are some of the worst memories you got?
Let's see. Let me run through this list of things that we have going on here.
You can ask me that question if you want, both questions, so that way give yourself some time to think about stuff.
Yeah, go ahead and answer that question for us, Mr. Ado.
The worst memories, or the best memories were the fun times. Obviously the recording can be fun, and sometimes editing can be fun. Just depends how much time I want to put into it. But the amount of time has always been the issue here, where, I have woken up super early in the morning to, edit a review to have it up on time, or to podcast edit, or, there's been times where I just feel stressed out. I have to get this, podcast. I've had people comment and say, well, this review should have been up like 2 days ago. Now it's useless to me. And it's like, we're trying as hard as we can. So we're trying to have this up as soon as possible, but it's so excruciating, and people really take this website, I guess, for granted, and some people feel like they are owned, reviews a certain time, a certain day, and they need to have this certain, and it's just like, they're so entitled, and it's so exhausting to try to cater to that, and it's like, this was supposed to be fun, and now y'all are like, hey, not y'all specifically like you, Christin, but there's some people in the audience that are just jerks, and
I would add to that this whole production has been pretty much you. I mean, I wrote music and helped out, where I could, and you had your staff, but it was you that was doing all the editing. You had no support team, and so you didn't have anybody that could work in shifts to get something out in a certain time. I mean, when it's all just one person that's holding down a job and holding down a family and trying to hold down a podcast. It is grueling work.
And I did try to train Krista to help do with podcast editing, and she got it. She was good at it, but she just didn't have time for it. And
Right.
same thing with, I actually had Mickey, help with once, and he seemed to like it, but he just doesn't have time for it, and no one has the time for it. So it's hard to justify. Well, can you make the time when I don't pay anybody? And that's not something I am proud of. I would have loved to pay y'all money, but
Right.
the website does not make money, and it costs money. And any profits, any money I get from Google Ads or whatever, that is, not even a drop in the bucket of the debt that I've came by to pay for this stuff. So
Right. That's why I said it was solely really on you. And I have an old saying that I often refer to. I always say it's really hard to build greatness when you're working full time for somebody else. And you almost have to be independent so that you're able to commit to something 100%.
So there's definitely some savages that are like, I remember, I don't remember if I told the story before. It's all kind of a blur of what things I've said or haven't said on air. I put the Mario movie up, the review, and then the first comment was on a Facebook group, "Who wrote this review?" And I have to bite my lip, and I was like, dumbass, if you just click the damn thing, the very top would say my name. And you could, but you don't even bother. You just want to, it's like, okay, you know what? No, I'm not going to fight these idiots. I want to fight these idiots, but I'm not going to because it's not good. I don't want to do this. And it's just frustrating. Sometimes the comments I'll get, I got an email saying, "Oh, you guys talk too much about Trump." And it's like, we really try not to talk about politics, but it's just like, we have to have our own opinions too. So,
Well, in today's day and age, if you just mention that, if you just say use the Trump card, you basically get dinged. So,
the laughs we have on the podcast are genuine and not really planned. And there's definitely some discussions we've had that are not planned, but it goes really well. And there's just a lot of laughs. And it's a worst and best memory writing Gods of Egypt. And of course, the worst memories are all these goddamn movies. There's, I don't know what was my deal, but Exodus, God and Kings, and what was the other one? Gods of Egypt. Both of those movies are so bad. I don't know why those movies were so bad. Yeah. You watched both movies, right? Yeah.
I did. I actually, Gods and Kings was the first movie that I ever watched in the modern 3D era. And even the cinematography of that movie, I kind of took note. I remember quite vividly that the light balls from the orbs from the sun inside of one of the shots was in 3D as well. And I just thought how strange it was that they actually overlaid the sort of anomalies. They didn't take time to, remove that or put it in the background as it probably should have been, but it was actually in the foreground.
Do you have any worse memories, or do you feel bad that, sometimes you just weren't available for podcasts, or no?
Well, I stayed pretty busy. I just tried to stay in my lane these past 9 years.
What is it like to be a podcaster for those who are wondering?
It was a lot of work. That music that I produced, I'm not the kind of musician that can just crank something out. I have to spend a lot of time with it. In fact, I've had cats come and sit on my hands because I practiced the same song for literally maybe 100+ times, before I record it.
What, you don't get it the first take?
No, they my cat one year got so fed up with me playing this one part. It was late at night. It was like 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. and I was trying to record it, and I kept playing it over and over again. And I have a picture of him where he came and sat on my hands. He was like, "Stop playing that." So I stopped and turned everything off and went to bed.
And sometimes you may hear some of, like, I think some birds of yours that you had kind of speak in
Yes,
the
yes.
background.
That's my trademark that shows that this is not a copy, that I'm not copyright infringing. This is an original work.
And there's definitely been some times in the podcast with my dogs or cats are meowing or barking in the background, and it's like, oh, it's too much hassle to try to find and edit that out. At the same time, though, I wonder in the future if we listen to this podcast and after they've passed, it just brings up a nice memory of them. So, what is it like to be a movie reviewer for those who are curious?
I think you have to go into a movie looking at things from a slightly different perspective. You're not just going in there to eat popcorn and sit with your date. You're actually having to remember character names, which I often failed at.
IMDb is your friend.
Yeah, I referred to that many times because you actually start reviewing things, and you realize that you have to take it from a different lens. You're not a viewer at that point. You're actually having to make archives and notes.
Now, I remember, Kristen, you said that I had a different voice being on air. Do you think I still have that different voice, or you think or no?
I think it is. I think it has become more your voice over the last 9 years.
Okay.
But my voice changed too. You get used to hearing your own voice on air, and you get more comfortable with it. It stops catching you off guard.
Because you want to project and enunciate and really say your thoughts clearly, so you want to try to have a better version of your casual conversation.
I think it's a little bit of that, but I think it's also that we are so used to putting on masks in society that when we are being recorded, we often put on a certain mask that we feel more comfortable with than our own. And I think as you grow older and you get a little more comfortable hearing yourself, you kind of start feeling like you might have sounded pretentious at one point, and so you become a little more honest on the air.
And reviewing movies is also interesting because you can't take notes while you're watching a movie.
That's what I was saying when I'm having to make mental notes. That's why when I went to see movies that I was going to review, I had to kind of go in a different state of mind.
But yeah, you can't really take a pad and paper or your iPad and type with it, because that would be disruptive. And you want to be in the moment of the cinema, but you don't want to. It's a hard balance. And a lot of times I did this for Patreons, where I would watch a movie review and I would not write the review that day because I want to sleep on it. But I would write some bullet points and put it onto Patreon, so that way they have it early, and I can refer to those bullet points and add meat to those bones, and that way you get a good review, because you had some time to think about it, because sometimes you dream and sleep and you're like, a movie wasn't as good as I thought, or maybe it was bad or something, and having the score system that we had, I liked, we kept that simple. I always thought the star system was weird.
Yeah, star systems are kind of limiting. It might be better, if instead of having this very stringent, score system, where we could just say how much we like the movie. Maybe audience was what might have connected with that.
Now, you saw a bunch of the bad movies. Do you remember have any ones that you really, really enjoyed?
I think the one movie that I would have enjoyed seeing in 3D, but the theater that I was seeing it didn't show it in 3D, was Road Fury. The Mad Max movie.
Okay, yeah, that was pretty good in 3D. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that it was, and it was obvious that it wasn't, that 3D probably wasn't an afterthought for for that movie. It looked like the cinematographers and the directors, spent a lot of time making sure that it would present, and that it wasn't just a 3D experience. It was actually putting you in the moment.
And Blade Runner.
Yes, Blade Runner. Yes, that was a good movie.
2049 specifically.
Yes, of course. And that was another one of those. I don't know if it's just the Dallas, North Texas market, but so many theaters that I went to only had like the huge box office titles that were on 3D, and it was either something I wasn't interested in, or it wasn't something that I was supposed to be reviewing at that particular moment. Because I don't believe I saw Blade Runner in 3D either, if memory serves.
Now, I don't remember if you ever had a chance to talk about the Star Wars sequels. What are your thoughts on those?
I think they're a little trite and contrived. I think that's the reason Disney is catching a lot of trouble and losing money on those. I think that the first one kind of started off. I know that it was kind of rehashed from the original, but I think we should reflect that the first three movies, kind of echoed back to the original movie, like in Return of the Jedi, kind of harkened back to the original A New Hope. And so that's kind of the circular plot is kind of something that's with Star Wars, so I could kind of get with it. And but the second and third films just really, really disappointed, and I just think they have a lot of damage control.
Okay. Now, I don't know how many people knew about this, but there's been times where I would write a review, and I would write it so many times, and I want someone else to look at it, and you'll be the one I trust to look at my review and then give me feedback, and I appreciated that.
I appreciated the way that you became a better writer over these past 9 years. When we started, sometimes reviewing some of your work was a bit like office work. I mean, it was work, fixing things. But as you went on and you found a voice, I watched you turn into an extremely well-versed and very skilled writer. And it became easier and easier, and I would just laugh behind my desk because you had just become such a profoundly skilled writer over the course of the podcast.
I really feel like the writing has kind of fed onto each other, where I learned from you and you learned from me and I learned from everyone else because I was ultimately the editor of everything. So, I had James write some short reviews and I was like, that's it? It's like, that's it. And it's like, you know what? That's actually pretty good. We don't need to have, 12-page reviews if you don't want to.
Right. It's really easy. That's one thing that we used to focus on in college is that it is really easy to get overly wordy when you're a writer. You almost get to where you feel like you're writing a magnum opus of music or something, and forget that other people are actually having to read this. And sometimes brevity is a skill as well that writers have to learn.
And I always thought it was a challenge, but actually really fun challenge to not have spoilers or to very much limit the spoilers in a review, because you have to talk about something without directly talking about it and know how to discuss something and say, the ending was bad without saying what the ending was, or the final act kind of fell apart or was really fantastic. You don't have to say why, but you could say that in that way, trying to learning that kind of film review on the fly and kind of thinking about stuff like that. And it's like, I could talk about, I like the characters and how they worked. I don't have to say that this character died,
Right. And I think that's one thing that you helped me with when I was writing reviews, is that you would sometimes ask me to omit, or you would delete certain portions of my review that were a little too revealing of the actual nuts and bolts of the movie itself.
And In the early days, I felt like we were really good about going back and forth and, okay, here's this, here's that, here's this, here's that, what, things to change. And, time just became, it's like, okay, I got to get this review up eventually. And I've been working on
Yeah,
this.
back in
So,
the early days, I think you and I watched movies from a completely different perspective, and I think that we both noticed things that the other ones didn't notice.
what are some surprises that you had working on the website and podcast that you didn't foresee beforehand?
With the prizes?
With the podcast and the website?
Uh, I think it just helped me focus as a musician and as a writer to try to be a little more concise, a little more in time. I practice every day, but when you're practicing every day, it's kind of like almost like a mumbling a prayer. You don't listen to your timing so much, or your fingering so much, or your rhythms or your beats. And when you're actually recording something, you actually start paying attention to that. So I think that helped me improve as a writer and a musician.
Do you actually listen to the podcast?
I do listen to the podcast. I don't listen to all of them, but definitely the ones that you have asked me to listen to, I have.
And it's
Many of films that I haven't even watched. Some of them just kind of made me think that it was kind of like the new acronym that I shared with you recently, the JOMO. It was like, oh, I'm kind of glad I missed that. Because I pretty much work 7 days a week, so it's when I take time for a movie, it needs to be worth my time. I thought that I thought that Endgame was entirely too long of a film, because I'm constantly thinking about the time invested that I have to put into these films, and it just that you don't need so many. There were just too many back and forth battles of give and take, and I'm like, oh my god, this is the kind of thing you'd put in a novel. This isn't the kind of thing you put into a film.
Avengers Endgame, specifically.
Yes, Avengers Endgame. Yeah, I had to take that movie in 2 parts, because after about 2 hours, I was exhausted and I was out of time, and I ended up having to come back to it like a week or two later to finish watching it. And when I got to the end of it, I was like, it was a really good film, and it definitely had it hit its marks and everything. But I just kept thinking, but they could have hit those same marks without that battle scene just dragging on for literally a solid hour of just back and forthness.
Did you ever watch Spider-Man No Way Home?
I did not watch that.
Okay, you would enjoy that.
I probably would. I just they need to bring back Tobey Maguire, not as Spider-Man, but he should at least do a cameo in it.
Yeah, you should watch the movie.
Oh, is he in it? Okay, well, I'll have to check it out then. See, if you told me that earlier, I could have already been there, done that.
It's interesting as I listen to the podcast, and I try to think as much as I can before I say things, and try to think about how to write things, and try not to, say things I always do. Like I say, a lot, and I try not to think about it, but it's just kind of how I speak. So it's one of those things that once you know that you do things, it's hard to undo it, but you get self-conscious, and then you have to be like, oh, wait. And then you don't want to self-censor, but then it's a ebb and flow, because you do want to learn from yourself, but you don't want to just overanalyze yourself either.
Right. I think that just you kind of become conscientious of your little idioms and things like that you kind of want to get away from. I think everybody does that when they're speaking.
And even though you weren't like a big part of the podcast, I felt like it was a treat, though, when you did come.
Oh, I appreciate that. It was always a treat for me too.
And
I had to divvy out my time, because I go 7 days a week. It's when I get a day off, it's like, this is my day off.
And you were there for some of the the movie game I think we had where the people would vote for whatever
Yes, yes,
movie club,
yes.
and they gave you an opportunity to watch some movies you haven't seen before and some movies you wanted to see, right?
Yeah, yeah. I didn't. I don't think I watched any movie that I didn't actually want to go view. If I didn't want to go see it, I didn't go see it. So uh, sometimes your recommendations would lead me to actually go see a movie that I might not have otherwise saw. So kudos to you for that.
I mean, there's a lot of movies I never would have seen if I didn't have the website. There's like maybe a good third, if not half, because I'm fine waiting to watch it at home. And at first I was running around like a chicken with the head cut off because I got to review everything, and that was exhausting. And when do I have the time to do anything but myself? And eventually try to get somebody, and got James and Krista and everybody, and Jake and John to help review stuff. But I was reviewing everything at first, and it was just kind of exhausting. And okay, the website needs a review, so I'm the only one, so I have to watch this kids movie by myself in the theater. And I felt like a big pervert when I was the only adult in there without a kid watching SpongeBob. But it is what it is. And there's only one time, Kristen, that I got to meet someone that knew the website in person, and that was actually kind of fun.
Yeah, you had mentioned that. I'd almost forgotten about that. Tell us a little bit about that.
My wife and I went to go see Black Widow, and the guy that's sitting next to me, or because you get to pick the seats beforehand, and I was like, "Oh yeah, you excited?" It's like, "Yeah," and then it's like, "Yeah, I hope the 3D is pretty good." That was like the first movie after COVID, and it's like, "Yeah, I hope so too." And then he saw my hat, and was like, "Hey, I go to your website all the time." I was like, "Thank you." It's like I'm the main person behind it. I'm Adolph. It's like, "Oh, cool." Yeah, I really like your website, man. And we talked for a little bit after the movie, but I was with my wife, so I didn't want to abandon my wife or whatever. And it wasn't so, but it was good to know that someone in real life knew about this, because
Wow.
having an online presence means that you don't necessarily have people that will see you or hear you, and worldwide presence at that. There might be people in Asia that would like to get to know me, or Africa or whatever, and maybe they're big fans over there, but I don't know.
Right.
So it's one of those moments in time that are good, and the moments in time where I'm exhausted and just I'm tired of writing and tired of podcasting, and just I want to get the damn review up already and move on.
Little things like that can breathe fresh air into your motivations. And
Do you have any regrets?
regrets. I think the only thing I ever uploaded as far as music that I didn't really care for was that it was like from a Nintendo song. I'm trying to remember what it was. I was never satisfied with the way that turned out. It was like I can't remember what that video game was. It was like, gosh, maybe back in 2014, 2015.
I don't remember.
Yeah, there was something I had written some background songs for or music for from some Nintendo game, and I always regretted that I didn't have more time to spend to that for that piece.
I do regret that we weren't able to have you on more stuff, but I understand, and I regret that the relationships I wasn't able to keep with some of our former editors. That I tried, and it sometimes personalities don't match up, and we try our best to work through it, and just that sometimes it doesn't work out, and it's sad.
I think it's important when you're in something like this to realize that you're kind of in a flow state, and people are going to pass in and out of the podcast exactly the way they pass in and out of your life, and sometimes it's better just to let go and follow those social cues that maybe they don't want to keep this relationship going, and just let it go, and don't have any regrets about that, because it was a natural end, just like the podcast, a natural end.
And it's interesting that you're the only person that's on the website that know me before the website.
Oh, okay.
So everyone else has started after, but we had our friendship at work, and I think recorded a couple of things on my phone way back in the day for I think it was YouTube or Facebook or something. I remember we did a Man of Steel review together. Um,
Yes.
so you were there in the early days, and like I remember, I was all excited that I got the website up, and then you checked me. He's like, "Oh, you misspelled some stuff in the about page." I was like, "Damn it!" So there's always going to be like something with the grammar and spelling. And writing and doing all that. You have to get to a point where you're done, because you
Yeah.
could always change a sentence or paragraph or add this or that or I would basically add a lot of meat and edit a lot of different reviews, and I would have to try to do my best to have the podcast or the review still sound and feel like it was written by the same person, just a better version of that. So,
I think you really excelled at that as time went on.
and it's difficult because I want to write how I wrote it, but I haven't seen the movie yet sometimes, so I don't know.
Right.
And
Writing is hard work. I always tell people that writing is hard work. That's why writers unions and they don't do it for free. Because it's a lot of work.
do you have any excitement for cinema in the future, or are you worried that it's going to go extinct?
I don't think it's going to go extinct. I do think that a lot of these theaters may become bygones and end up being demolished like a old hotel. But no, I think cinema will always have its place. But I do think that the modern era is going to make them as rare as payphones.
It's interesting that the Mario movie has already crossed 1 billion and it's now on streaming and only been out a month. And having 1 month in the screen is now good enough, and that is not sustainable. You have to watch that movie the first 2 weeks, or else first week or two, or else you want to see it in 3D. But if you don't see it in a month, all right, you get to watch it in streaming, but then you have to go through the maze of streaming services and what service has this movie, and then this movie goes over there at this time, and Netflix has exclusivity for this one for 6 months, and then it goes to Amazon or goes whatever, and it becomes a pain in the ass to
Yeah,
think.
that's one thing that the industry has really done in the past 20 or so years is it just this rush to make a big quick cash cow, get in and get out. There's no more slow stir. There's no more social carry on. Like, I think about Star Wars. My God, kids are still talking about Star Wars in the late '80s. And it just they're not going to be talking about that Mario movie 2 years from now, or even 6 months from now. And that's just one example. I mean, I would argue that even the new Star Wars films have already kind of become old habit, and just the studios are just looking for a quick buck, and this new $1 billion mark that they've got to hit. It's like it either makes $1 billion on opening night or it's a flop. I think that it really threatens to destroy cinema more than theaters closing.
I think there's always going to be a place for cinema, because even if you have a great home setup, you still want to have sometimes where you want to get out of the house, period.
Yep.
and having that better experience is not guaranteed anymore, where it used to be, oh yeah, of course, the cinema is way better than at home back in the 80s and 90s, but now with 4K TVs and surround sound, you can have a pretty damn great experience at home. You don't have to, because you and I grew up in a time where a 32-inch TV was huge.
Yep.
And then if you got a giant projection screen TV, those cost thousands of dollars, and now you could buy a pretty awesome TV for like $1,000.
Yeah. I when I was a kid, I remember my parents had my grandparents had a console TV, CRT TV, and they were they used to have those theater projection screens, that had their RGB module that sat in the middle of the living room. People that had those had spent some points close to $8,000 in 1980s money for those things, and it's just insane to think about how much they spent on these technologies that are now sitting in a landfill because they're not worth repairing. And so the technology has definitely gotten a lot cheaper. So I believe that the future, and I'm just sure we've talked about this before, is that the future of 3D isn't in cinema, but at home. And I think that once the technology reaches a point where people can revisit older films that weren't originally filmed in 3D, but through some sort of digitized effect or computer rendering, can actually make them a decent experience in 3D. I think that would be a good experience for consumers.
There has been some TVs that do that. They're expensive, and obviously it doesn't work for everything. And the TVs themselves, the reason I never got a 3D TV was because of the costs and how much of a maze that is too, where, well, our TV uses this style and we only use these kinds of glasses. We have to buy from this company. And
yeah, I think that's something that'll eventually weed itself out. Luxury always starts with the wealthy and works its way down. The television sizes are a testament to that. There was a time that I can remember when having an automatic transmission was considered a luxury upgrade. And now you'd be hard pressed to buy a car that doesn't have an automatic transmission and power windows and seats. So I think that the technology of the 3D TV, if there's a market for it, that will eventually go down in price so that average consumers can afford it.
Yeah, it's kind of come and gone, and it's kind of sad because there was some stuff that was streaming on 3D, but then you would need to have a high bandwidth internet, and it just didn't exist for a lot of people. And the Blu-rays came out, but Blu-rays became such a inconsistent thing. It became hard to, is this movie going to get a 3D Blu-ray release? No. Oh. And it's difficult because I've seen some 3D Blu-rays, and it looks better than the theaters in some ways because it's more consistent, and they know the Blu-ray has technology that is consistent, where the projection, if you go to one theater, the projection might be a 10 out of 10, and if you go to another theater, well, the projection's like a 5 out of 10, and so you never know.
3D has come and gone since the 50s, and I think it will come and go again. And this was just another installment of 3D to try to get it to catch wind. It caught a lot more traction this time than it did, the previous times, like back in the 80s when they tried to have 3D movies, and that didn't catch on. And I think it will come back. I do think that a huge barrier with the technology was what you just mentioned. Is I think that the 3D experience might have been better if they had had dedicated 3D movie theaters. I don't know if that would have been cost prohibitive, but if they could have, kind of like the IMAX theaters, that have a, that it's going to be an excellent experience, but throwing this 3D experience on so many different theaters with so many different technologies may have actually been its undoing.
Yeah, I could see that because they, paid to upgrade it, and then they don't want to pay to upgrade the bulbs or upgrade the stuff once they got it. They want to, keep it. So
it may have been cost prohibitive. I mean, it may have been that the amount that they were charging for these tickets wasn't sustainable.
Yeah. So I feel like their cinema is always going to be a good place to a degree, where it's nice to get out to watch a self-contained story. TV. There's a lot of great TV shows now, But sometimes you just want to have 2 hours away from the house and watch something that's self-contained, that you don't have to watch the other 5 episodes or 3 seasons or whatever. That's, part of the reason why I have gotten into anime is because, like, oh, have you watched Dragon Ball? And it's like, there's like 40 seasons of Dragon Ball and like thousands of episodes. It's a kind
You
of
mentioned that you mentioned that about Doctor Who, which I take for granted because I realized that I'd had a whole lifetime to watch those shows, but I could see how starting from the bottom, you'd be like, oh my God, there's like 60 years of these shows.
So, having a self-contained film that you could go watch and, have 2 hours to spend or an hour or whatever, maybe 3 hours, whatever. It's still enticing, and you want to get out of the house. I love being in the house, but at the same time, it's good to get out, Do you have any revelations that you want to reveal to the audience that they may not know, or?
Revelations, can't think of anything. I will say that when I wrote the original theme song, that the theme song for the exit music was back in 2014. I usually write songs in my sleep and wake up the next morning and actually hammer them out. But back in 2014, both of my parents passed, just one right after the other, within literally 1 month of each other to the day. And I was driving over to U-Haul to pick up some boxes in order to start packing up their things. And because I realized I couldn't keep everything. And I actually wrote that song while I was driving the car. It's called The Kitty, and that's what the original title of that song is. And I was surprised that I was able to get the key signature, the tempo and everything for that song just all within about 5 minutes. And I sang it into my Android phone that I had at the time, and got home and started working on it. And I think that was one of the first times that I had ever written music so quickly that just came together. And that's why I wanted to use it for the outro of the show, because I had basically written that song as sort of a ode to joy moment in reflection of my parents' passing, about just reflecting on how much my parents and I loved cats when I was growing up.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's a fantastic story, and it sucks for your parents, but it is, sorry.
But that's okay. It's been 9 years ago now, so I wasn't sure at the time, but that little song was kind of a light at the light in the tunnel.
And the intro was always kind of a play of a kind of a parody, not really, of let's go watch the movies and get snacks. The commercials that they used to have in front of theaters.
Right.
I don't know.
Enjoyed recording that.
Yeah, I don't know if people still know about that, but that was a big thing where they would have, reminders to go instead of a direct Coca-Cola commercial or whatever. You would actually have, dancing candy bars and be like, let's go to the lobby and get your snacks. And, because the snacks and the food at the theater is the main way they get money. That $4 Coca-Cola is a lot of profits.
It's like that for almost any business that sells things in high quantity. Gas stations, they make all their profit on the refreshments that they sell inside. That's why so many gas stations like QT and Racetrack have doubled down, with foods and snacks and ice creams and soda shops and so forth. And it's like that for a lot of businesses. Radio Shack, their main profit wasn't like with the big ticket items that they sold. Those were very low profit margin. Most of their profits were from the bulbs, the fuses, the kits that they sold. That's where all their profit was. So they lured you in with one thing and then sold you something else.
And I've gotten actually a couple compliments on the intro. They're like, I love that intro. It's so cute. So, that's actually some good comments I've gotten. So I don't know if I ever told you that.
Yeah, oh, that's good. And that's Jerry singing, of course.
Jerry, your husband. Now, I do wish that we had a chance to talk to Jerry on the podcast, but that time never worked out.
Jerry is more busy than I am.
So I guess that's a regret. Because, I didn't hire a professional. I mean, y'all do great work, but I didn't, it's not like it's not like other places where you hire a professional to do this intro or that. I edit it and put it together, and a lot of times where I don't know what I'm doing. I have to look up classes. I have to do this and that, and it's so much to do and so much to get the scope of, and it's kind of hard to take the breaks. It's hard, it's been last 5 years or so I've been kind of wanting to end this website. It's not a revelation for 2023 or whatever. It's and then the COVID kind of made it worse. But it's just like, one more year. It's kind of not that bad. And maybe I'll get better at this and get faster at this. But it could take hours.
Yeah, it's difficult where you're trying to do everything on your own.
It could take...
You carried this podcast. I mean, if it hadn't been for you, there wouldn't have been one.
For, a 2-hour podcast, it could triple that amount of time to edit it. Because you want to make sure things sound good, and even with the technology we have, it's still, you got to hear it, you got to and have just the amount of process it takes, time and multiple different microphones and different kinds of tech to use and applications, and it's a lot of work, of work.
And I think tripling the amount of time that I took to record a podcast is being very conservative. When you take into account everything, it may take you a couple of days to edit a 2-hour show, just like it takes 2 years to make a 2-hour movie.
And, the same thing with written podcasts or written reviews. It looks like you just 3 paragraphs. Well, it took like 2 hours to kind of make it work. So, yeah, I guess that's a revelation. What are you going to do after the podcast ends? Do you have any website plugs you want to give? Anything specific? Businesses you want to give plugs to, or yourself?
I could give a plug for Jerry's podcast, Modern Brews and Beats, which I also listen to every year or every week. It's he and his friend Tony D that do podcast about beer, custom beers, and they also talk about other things, such as current events and sports and things that basically segue out of the topics of local beers.
I still have plans to continue stuff, even though it's not with the website. I have YouTube pages that I'm playing with. I have some AI stuff I've been playing with. I did an AI video with Trump and Back to the Future, where I do Trump's voice of Biff instead of the actual voice, and it worked out really well. So those are
becoming very popular, and they're very humorous.
Yeah, and I have a lot of ideas of how to do that, and I feel like that's something that I could do. And I have a lot of ideas that's not 3D related that I've never had time for, because the website just eats up so much time, free time, and I should be playing Zelda, but I'm recording a podcast. I should be applying for jobs, but I'm recording a podcast. So it's just a time suck, and I have other ideas. So I have another YouTube page or two that you could follow me on, and this chapter is done, but I'm an artist, and I'm starting photography. I'm gonna try to become a professional photographer, and
I'm very excited about that for you.
So that's something that I'm. Keep Googling me. You'll find me. I will not go away, because that artist itch doesn't go away when you're done. You're done with this chapter, but not forever chapter,
Right. You just it's time to start a new project.
So this time, I'll give you a minute to have a monologue, and I'll let you say whatever you want. So if you just want to say obscenities, go for it. If you want to talk about politics or news, go for it. If you want to talk about anything and everything, I won't censor it. I won't delete it. I will Promise you, it'll be as is. I might just edit the dead air, but anything you want to say, Christin, go for it.
It won't take me very long. I met Adolph back in, I think it was let's see, when was it? 2010?
Yep.
And I could tell that you were one of those exceptional people when I first met you. Everybody else thought you were a nerdy weirdo inside the file room. But I saw through that, and I told them that they were quite wrong, and I stand by that. The fact that I'm still friends with you now is demonstrative that of the caliber of human being that you are. And I think the commitment that you've given to this podcast is a testament that you're not the kind of person that just sits around and talks about doing things. You're the kind of person that does things. And you'd be surprised if that's the 1 out of 100. And I think that you're the 1 out of 100 type of person that you almost never meet. And I'm always glad that when I do.
All right. Well, thank you. I'll use my minute of time to go political and deep. But look, I think we're living in a time of divisiveness and of a lot of primal kind of thinking, I guess. I don't know if the best primal, tribal way of thinking, where you're either this way or that way. And I say this now and I say it again, stop it. Stop it. There's 100 shades of gray. Not every conservative is an asshole. Not every liberal is a hippie. That there is definitely people in the middle. There's definitely times where I have, maybe I'm liberal in some things, but sometimes I'm conservative in other things. And it's an ebb and flow. And stop hating each other. For God's sake, stop it. We are one people of a species. And the time on this earth is limited. We have to love each other and try to be decent to each other. There's a lot of hate going around this world, not just the U.S., not just because of Trump or whatever. In the whole world, anti-Semitism, is rampant, and racism is rampant. Where it used to be something small, or a minority, now it's a huge amount of people that have no shame about being racist or hateful or homophobic or transphobic. Just live and let live. Why is that so hard for people to do? Why? Just stop it. Stop it. Look, everyone's going to die one way or another. There's no way to avoid that. Try to live the best life you can and try to make the best life that you can for everybody else. And try to lift people up. And if that means, all right, today maybe you give the homeless guy $10 instead of $2, or instead of giving him nothing. And you know what? Sometimes it's okay to give a homeless guy a beer. It's fine. Because you know what? If I was in that position, I would get drunk all the time too. And there's been times where I give a homeless person $100. And the joy they have for $100, it's a joy that I, can't have. Because I can't imagine that. But for that person, they were able to sleep at night in the hotel, have dinner, and not have to worry about things. Did he spend it on crack or whatever? I don't know. I don't care. But it mattered big to him. And $100 for me, isn't that big a deal. So it's one of those things you just got to try to do better for the future, for everyone. We got to stop hating each other. We got to start listening to each other and stop caring for each other and stop it. There's, you can be moderate, but not, you could have moderate views on different things. And technically I'm a moderate compared to, European liberals, compared to, and we got to find ways to stop hating each other and put the volume down and just start talking to each other. So that's what my final monologue is. And I'm sad that I have to say that, because I don't want to say that, because it's so sad that I felt like humanity is backtracking and becoming worse. And it's just all over the world. We're stressed out. We're frustrated or angry at each other. We just need to stop it, because I could very much see that World War III is on the edge, and we're going to regret not listening to me if once the nukes start falling down or whatever. We need to be better and do better. So that's my minute. I'm sorry if that offended you, Christin.
No, this is exactly what I was talking about before you started.
So I guess it's going to be it for us. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening.